Okay, great. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. So today's webinar is the Minorities in Mental Health, hosted by Modern Divergence, and we are so glad that you guys could make it. So before we begin, I'd actually like to go over our agenda for today and give a brief overview about everything we'll be talking about. So first, we will be introducing our main topic, mental health in minorities, by talking about some important questions and statistics that is important to keep in mind throughout the webinar, because we'll be connecting them to various topics throughout the webinar. And after that, we'll be going into disparities in mental health care, its effects, mental health consequences, effects, and how to generate your own happiness and steps that you can take as an individual to improve your mental health. Finally, we will end our presentation by leaving the last 10 minutes open for Q&A and discussions, and we will do our best to answer as many questions and respond to all the comments as we can. So feel free to drop down your questions in the chat throughout the webinar. Great. So before we start our first discussion, mental health and minorities, I'd like to introduce myself. If I haven't already mentioned, my name is Aishwarya Sudarshan, and I am the Director of Development at Modern Divergence. I live in Plano, Texas, and I am a rising junior at Plano West Senior High School. A little bit about me is that I'm passionate about computer science and programming, and I've actually spent a lot of time working on apps and projects throughout the summer and learning machine learning. But I also like anything related to STEM and enjoy doing anything with it. I've played the violins from a very young age, so 4th grade, and I volunteer in the community as much as I can as well. If you would like to reach out to me, my contact information is on the slide. So if you have any questions about the webinar or just about me, I'd be happy to talk to you. Great, so let's move on to the questions for today. I'm going to go through them one at a time just to explain a little bit about it. Our first question is, what minority communities suffer from poor mental health and why? Well, the types of groups that suffer from poor mental health tend to be racial and ethnic minorities, as well as gender and sexual minorities. And they are mostly affected because of their inaccessibility to mental health care services and the cultural stigma that surrounds mental health care. And they face so much discrimination that a lot of people don't spread awareness about mental health, especially towards their groups. So these groups aren't well recognized because there are few of them, and they suffer from mental health issues and stigma because of discrimination for who they are, and they definitely don't deserve to be going through that. Great. So our next question is, how often do people from diverse populations suffer from poor mental health? Well, usually minority groups often have fewer cases related to mental health disorders or mental health problems, but there are definitely cases and issues that they face on daily lives if they do have it. And the thing about minorities in mental health is because there are fewer cases, they often have more severe consequences, and that has an effect on the people who suffer from poor mental health in minorities. So our third question for today is, what minority groups have the most mental health problems and why? So we answered the question of what minority groups suffer as a whole, and we talked about the smaller groups that suffer as well. But this question is mainly trying to answer what groups specifically within the minority groups itself suffer from a higher rate of mental health problems, especially in comparison to the rest of the US population. And most of the time, they are actually directly linked towards American Indians and Native populations. And the reason that they have higher rate of mental health problems is because of the fact they've had so much historical trauma that has been forced onto them. And even though there have been many generations facing this, and now it doesn't seem like that big of a problem, The fact that it happened is what causes mental health issues for them. So our next question is, why is there poor mental health treatment for minorities? This is probably one of the most important questions to remember throughout our webinar, because it's a problem that needs to be addressed, and there has to be a solution for it as well. Again, I'm only introducing the topic, and we're definitely going to go in more depth about it with our other speakers and panelists. But for now, all I'm going to say is that mental health outcomes for several minority groups are poor, and it actually results in mood disorders, substance abuse, and suicide. And it's more frequent in people who have a minority background because mostly of the barriers they face just to have access to mental health treatment, in addition to the stigma they already have to face because of the discrimination they have on a daily basis. And finally, the question that we are trying to make an impact with is, what positive impact can we contribute to improving mental health? Well, this is a question I'd like for you guys to keep in mind throughout the webinar, because our panelists and speakers are going to be talking mainly about this to show you what we can do as a community to help improve mental health around us. For now, let's talk about the graphs on the screen. This is just some statistics that we found that were important to this webinar. So as you can see, the first graph at the top shows how mental health treatment is given by race and is actually quite unequal. And that's what contributes to poor mental health services. The bottom graph shows the effect of limited access to mental health treatment, and it can cause mental health problems and increased severity across minority groups. But actually, when compared to other groups, you can see that the minority groups suffer more because they're often denied access to proper mental health treatment.
Okay, so I'm going to be delving into the topic of disparities in mental health care. And before I do, I'll just introduce myself. So I am the executive director and founder of Each Mind, an organization I started about a month ago to kind of focus on three main pillars. Firstly, action by fundraising for youth mental health organizations and clinics. Then also education by using media for good. And then also advocacy by calling legislators in order to implement more legislation on mental health treatment in schools. So I'm a rising sophomore from New York City, and I'm really passionate about social justice and the intersection it has with mental health advocacy. That's something I'm going to be talking about during this webinar, kind of how social justice movements like gender, income, and race equality have a lot of basis on mental health advocacy and can be intertwined in order to make more of an impact. I'm also really interested in neuroscience, especially as it relates to medicine, biology, and psychology, and it's something I want to pursue as a career path. So before we delve into mental health disparities, I first want to define the framework. So in terms of health disparities, it's a term that's used for making statistical research on the burden of disease. So here, we're talking about the total affected population of the disease. So, for example, for certain types of cancer, only one gender would be affected. So you wouldn't say that women are disproportionately affected by the disease as they're the only group affected. Instead, you would say that amongst various other constituents in that group, there is a disproportionate burden of disease. And then in terms of describing the disparities in relation to mental health, there are two main buckets that it focuses on. Firstly, we talk about outcomes of mental health, which is commonly viewed as mental illness, as this is kind of the most extreme version. But of course, mental health exists for everyone and is definitely something that should be taken care of, even if you do not have a mental illness. And when we discuss the outcomes in terms of disparities, it's usually linked to family and community environment factors. So that's why there results in differences. And then there's the access to treatment that impacts the prognosis of a mental illness. So because access for treatment can differ, it means that the length of the disease and the severity of the illness, can differ amongst different socially disadvantaged groups. So in terms of types of disparities, as I said before, mental health affects everyone, but the statistical evidence shows that certain racial, ethnic, gender, and sexual minorities face disproportionate rates of mental illness, and furthermore, have barriers to treatment, which just further exacerbates the problem. So that's what we aim to focus on by having this month for minority mental health. So first I'm going to discuss income inequality and mental health. So mental health outcomes are affected in low-income groups because of exposure to substance abuse, trauma, and violence in neighborhoods and the community level. There is also, unfortunately, family financial, emotional, or structural instability that is highly correlated to poverty. Then in terms of mental health treatment, there are several barriers that low-income groups have to face. Firstly, because of unaffordable fees or uninsured status preventing access to mental health care because it is unaffordable. And then there are also practical factors that often get overlooked, like work hours or transportation troubles that can make it difficult to have regular appointments with a therapist or psychologist. And then next, moving on to race. And this kind of ties into the bigger conversation we're having about systemic racism. So there's certain barriers that BIPOC people face due to racial prejudice and biases. And this can really impact a person's perception of self-worth and their identity. And there's also, which ties in back to my first slide, about economic disenfranchisement. And this is the result of predatory lending and housing that really affects BIPOC communities and prevents them from having the financial assets to be in a situation where there's better mental health treatment and an environment. And then is mental health treatment that is besides income inequality. And this has to do with the provider biases that result in misdiagnosis and poor quality of treatment. And then there's also less funding to racial and ethnic minority neighborhoods, regardless of income, due to the allocation of funding that's often tied into racist ideology. And so this results in fewer school mental health personnel or community clinics, which also prevents access to treatment. Then moving on to LGBTQ plus identities and mental health. So mental health outcomes are affected a lot by stigma, and this manifests itself as school, family, and community-based bullying, shaming, and harassment. And this has high correlations to depression and anxiety, which the Trevor Project is a great organization that attempts to raise awareness about this and help LGBTQ plus youth. Then there's also higher rates of sexual and physical violence, and that can directly cause mental illness like PTSD, and can also be anxiety-inducing fear. Then there's also mental health treatment barriers, such as the provider bias, and as I said before, this can result in poor quality of treatment because there is less of an incentive for the mental health professional to connect with the patient and also attempt to help their situation. And there's also the practice of conversion therapy, which in the past was even more of a problem, and now it's decreasing in use. And this ties into the second point about diagnosis of LGBTQ plus identity itself as a disorder because of homophobia and transphobia. And so instead of treating the actual outcome, the mental illness that was a result of oppression, conversion therapy centers attempt to treat LGBTQ plus identity, which is not something that should be treated as someone, it is and its identity, someone innate to who they are. And instead it should be viewed that oppression, as I talked about before, is the real cause of mental illnesses, such as depression, anxiety, and PTSD. So then moving on to the impact of each mind. So we're currently just started, and we now have 40 members on our team. And what we're focusing on right now is using media platforms for good. So commonly media gets associated with negatives, glorification of mental illness, and being triggersome. So instead of this, we're using podcasts and magazines to educate and especially on disparities and barriers to mental health from a student and expert perspective. We actually already have some blog posts up, if you go to our website, about LGBTQ plus and BIPOC disparities, and we have some more statistics that you can use for further reference. And then we're also taking action by calling representatives to support legislation, as I spoke about earlier. Specifically, we have a toolkit, and in that is the Pursuing Equity in Mental Health Act, which is an act that was introduced in 2019, and it aims to integrate primary and mental health care, educate future practitioners on bias, inform youth minority groups, and eliminate federal funds to conversion therapy centers. So this is a multifaceted plan that would help to alleviate kind of the disparities that we are currently facing. And then fundraising. We want to raise money for community behavioral health clinics. One that we are working with currently is Inwood Community Services, which is in Manhattan and caters to primarily minority group and low-income groups. So by doing this, we're helping them to augment their capabilities in terms of serving these youth with the funding that a lot of it got cut from COVID budgeting. And so the next thing is about how you can stay connected to each mind. So thank you all for attending this, and you're going to hear about more resources and delve more into different minority mental health, kind of the issues in that. And so you can stay connected with Each Mind. You can email me and can visit eachmind.org. Also, you can sign up for our newsletter, which is there, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And all of those, if you look up at Each Mind, each.mind is our username. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So now we are going to be moving on to talk about mental health hotlines. So I am going to answer questions once again, and I just actually put up the numbers on the slide if you'd like to see those numbers, and let's get started. So what is the purpose of these numbers, and what do hotlines do? Well, a hotline helps connect communication directly to a place anonymously, and it's predestined, so it's already decided, and services are available for people to make the right decisions and talk to someone and have a discussion or conversation about a problem they are facing and a step they want to take. So hotlines have proved to be very helpful for a number of people when they need something. And as statistics and studies have shown in the past few years, hotlines are actually increasing in use, especially because of how helpful they are and how well the outcomes are as a result of it. And there's a lot of positive feedback about it, especially during the time during COVID-19. Hotlines are actually increasing in use, especially now that people are getting restless and they're having more thoughts to themselves. So hotlines are really helpful, especially now, right now, when everything is closed and it's hard to actually communicate with people. So moving on to our next question. What is it like to actually moderate one of these hotlines? This is a pretty difficult question to answer, honestly, because unless you are moderating one of these hotlines, it can be a varied response. These calls vary based on the type of call you get. For example, there's the depression hotline, the suicide hotline, and there's always different calls you'll get about different situations, and you have to be able to handle them. If you get a wrong number, for example, obviously they'll just redirect you or they'll listen to you and understand what you're saying. But moderating these hotlines are no means easy. And they definitely require skill that we just don't realize. And people who are moderating these hotlines sometimes make the decision or help people make a decision about life. And it can be extremely stressful, but the people who do these jobs are well trained and they do what is best for their community and people around them and just everyone in general. They always try to do their best. And that's very important, and that really helps improve the mental health of everyone who calls. So our last question related to mental health hotlines is, how do you get a job volunteering at a suicide hotline? Well, you can easily sign up at the website suicidepreventionlifeline.org, and this volunteering organization or organization in general is just dedicated to helping people who need support. So you can easily just reach out to them or find their volunteering page and help find things you can volunteer for within your own community and train under them as well so that you can be ready for the types of calls you're going to get. So in general, I'd just like to summarize, hotlines have been very impactful over the years and have helped many people and will also continue to help a lot of people because of the amazing impact it has. So our next topic is about apps for mental health. So hotlines are something that can really help improve your mental health if you really need it and if you're in a situation where you need to discuss your problem with someone anonymously. So those really help. But outside of that, there are actually several apps that are really helpful in improving mental health as well. For example, the first app is called Stop, and it assists in stopping negative behaviors and making poor decisions. Equo is an app that is made to teach you how to improve your mental health through an interactive game. And it'll assign you tasks and jobs that you can do while playing, and you won't really notice it. So it can improve your mental health by distracting you in a way, but it's not negatively affecting you, and sometimes you might not even notice it. Calm Harm is another app that's very similar to Stop, but you can actually input your own data, and it'll help you make decisions based on the things you input. The last app on this slide is actually really helpful, and honestly, I would want to use it because improving mental health is not always just about anxiety and depression. There are other things related to mental health as well. And simply feeling happy with everyday tasks and waking up early to feel satisfied, you just feel happy. And I think that this would be really helpful for me because it wakes up heavy sleepers by having varied ringtones and randomizing it without making it repetitive and getting used to. So this is a couple more apps, and these three are mostly for productivity and working and creating good habits. So this is really great.
Hey y'all, I'm Sri Leka and I'm going to be covering college admissions and mental health during COVID. But first, a little bit more about me. I'm Sri Leka, like I said. I'm the founder and executive director of Plannr Consulting. Aishwarya, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, yeah, so I'm the founder and executive director of Plannr Consulting. We are a youth-led international nonprofit organization. We focus on spreading mental health awareness, and we offer free consultations for students, but more on that later. I'm also a freelance writer. A lot of my mental health work has been through my writing and not just through my organization. I write for Urban Asian, The Tempest, Readify, and a lot of different other freelance publications. So if you'd like to work with me or just connect, my socials and my website are on here. So college admissions. So right now, I know a lot of seniors are going through the college admissions process, same with me. And obviously we all want to get into a great school, right? The T20s, like amazing. But that pressure can often get to us mentally and cause a lot of stress and anxiety, especially when it's not only you wanting to get in, it's your entire family or friends. So it's really important to watch out and pay attention to your mental health, because not only can it cause mental health issues, but this can cause physical issues. There's so many stress-related physical health issues that can be results of stress and anxiety and depression and all of these different things. They're very interconnected. So when you're thinking about college jobs, it's important to think about your legacy, your future. Is this going to change your legacy? Is your legacy going to depend on getting into a T20 school? And that's just the way I look at it. There's so many ways to interpret this and think about it in a positive light. Which leads me to college admissions videos. So oftentimes, when we're researching for colleges, we end up looking at videos of other people getting in. So my motto here when watching these videos are to assess my mindset, making sure that I'm watching these in a positive light and not, thinking they got in, why am I? Because we don't see the hours of effort that they put in. We don't see all of that. We just see their reaction, right? We just see them getting in. And, I've even gotten obsessed with it time and time again when I watch these videos and I'm like, whoa, they got into UPenn. I need that. I want that. And then, I just start to get obsessed. But it's important to remember to look at it in a positive light. They got in. That's amazing. So what can I do? What effort can I put in? So I don't think they're bad necessarily. I think they're a good experience to watch. But I would just watch out for the way you're thinking about it. And the last point on college admissions is the cultural differences. So in my personal experience, I'm Indian American, so there's a really high stigma around mental health and college admissions both. So if you're not getting into, the best college, family members are like, okay, bye, you're out of the family. At least that's how it is with my experience. So, and it's different with every family, of course. But so in POC mental health, there's also that same stigma. So it's hard to kind of, think about mental health when you're doing college admissions because of that stigma. So it's important to watch out for that, be mindful of yourself and your family, and if possible, raise awareness to your family members. And next, we're going to be going through mental health in the time of the pandemic. So yeah, so the first thing is this syndrome. So psychotraumatic syndrome, it's when it happens when trauma is caused by isolation, basically. And it often happens with nostalgia, which is when you can't find comfort in a negative environment or a negative perceived environment, which obviously right now with the pandemic, there's so much negativity around, right? Like these rising numbers in the media, there's all of this stuff going on at once, and it's really hard to control. So this syndrome has started to develop in a lot of people. So it's just important to be aware that this is happening, and if you need to, seek help. And yeah, the next part is, okay, yeah. So the next part goes into feeling at home. So I wanted to focus a little bit on domestic and child abuse rates. So I did some research into this recently as I wrote like an article thing on it. And so apparently child abuse and domestic abuse rates are going down, but that's only because they haven't been reported because of the pandemic. So more people are, staying at home, and it's an unsafe environment. So, and this obviously has a huge connection to mental health, right? We have, when abuse leads to many PTSD, all of these different mental health issues. So feeling at home, feeling safe at home is the most important thing here. And during coronavirus, that can be hard to find that place. So it's important to, raise awareness and make sure that you are feeling at home where you are. And then this can also be connected to the disconnect with reality. This is a more recent discovery by Psychology Today, I think 2019 or so, but depersonalization, derealization, and disassociation. So depersonalization is the disconnect with yourself, your feelings, your emotions. Derealization is the disconnect with your environment, your surroundings. And then disassociation is a full disconnect with your physical and emotional self. So, in the time of the pandemic, everything can feel surreal, right? We're living in a literal pandemic. This was not expected. So there often can be a disconnect with reality, and going completely online, that could also be a cause of this. And then because of this disconnect with reality, it can also increase anxiety disorders and cause a lot of issues in the future. So, we named all of these issues. How can we cope with them? How can we cope with these different mental health issues? The biggest thing I like to emphasize on is self-care. I'm a huge person who loves self-care. Like, I'm huge in self-care for both the body and the mind. Again, I think they're very interconnected. So exercise, meditating, listening to music, literally anything in the world can be self-care, y'all. To me, I write a lot, so I just sit and write as my self-care. You can do a spa day, you can literally work if that's what you love to do. But self-care is really getting back to you and yourself, what your passions are, and paying attention to yourself, as it says in the name, self-care. Also, one thing that I personally like and use to cope is connecting with others. So some people are introverts, they might not want to connect with others, but it does help in some cases. Social media. So the big thing is, a lot of people have been saying that social media is horrible, let me take a break from it. And that's good. It's good to take a break because there is good and bad in social media. What I've done is kind of tailor fit my feeds on all platforms to fit the educational and the more positive side of things. But really, it's all algorithms. It's just what posts you like and what posts you engage with. So you can build your feed to fit you, and use it to connect with others in a positive light. So yes, the media can be used for good. But at the same time, it's also important to know when to take a break from watching COVID stuff, watching the numbers rising. It can be detrimental to your mental health. So just know when to take a break and when to get back at it and stay educated. And then also, toxic positivity can be good for your mental health when you're positive, right? When you're optimistic about the future, that's good. But it's also important to remember what is real and what is not. So the numbers are rising, yes, and we can be optimistic for the future, but we can't ignore that the numbers are rising. So what we've been seeing recently in the media is there's been a lot of toxic positivity where people are being overly positive, and that can also be detrimental to not only mental health, but physical health. And then finally, in crisis, get help, period. And yeah, if you're having a serious situation, then do not hesitate. There are so many hotlines, like we mentioned earlier in the webinar, so many places, apps that want to help you. Take that resource. They're here for you. And then finally, on the last slide, for my portion, self-deprecating jokes and mental health. So self-deprecating jokes and as a coping mechanism, yes, I do believe they can help. I do think personally, on a personal level, they can help. But there's a huge but there, because social media amplifies these jokes on a million billion level, right? So many people use social media, and most people like me, I don't use self-deprecating jokes. Most people, I mean, I can't speak for most people actually, so some people don't like self-deprecating jokes, but media does amplify this. So it's important to recognize that others may not want to see these jokes. Others might feel worse by hearing these jokes. I mean, you can see some of the examples on the side. They can help certain people. I mean, if you believe self-deprecating jokes can help you, then you can believe that. I'm not telling you what to believe, but I am trying to say just be a little more mindful about what you put out there on media, because it does touch and reach many, many people, and they can hurt others in some way. So just being careful and mindful of others is the big thing on self-deprecating jokes. And yeah, I just wanted to end my portion by talking a little bit more about my organization, Plannr Consulting. As I mentioned earlier, we do offer free consultations for all students. Lifestyle, mental health is a big thing here. And then also we do a lot of academic stuff, test prep, tutoring, college admissions, all the big stuff. And then we do have a Discord community with one of our partners, and also run a lot of mental health campaigns, a lot of awareness, a lot of breaking the stigma around mental health. So if you want to see more from us, follow us on socials. We're at Plannr Consulting.
Hi everyone, my name is Sanjana. I'll be talking about how to generate your own happiness. But before that, I'll do a bit of an introduction to myself. As mentioned, I'm Sanjana Karthik. I am the president of Your Words Matter to Us and Med Hopeful. I'm also the co-founder of my Espirit, executive of BC Youth Council. My passions include mental health, business, and writing poetry, as I am published, and I enjoy writing for various places. So as mentioned, today I'll be talking about generating your happiness, and this is something that is applicable to anyone, regardless of whether you're going through a traumatic phase or if you have a mental health issue. Generating your happiness is something that everyone can adopt, because taking care of your mental health is super important, and mental health is not just the absence of a mental health issue. It's about vitality and learning to be happy regardless of external circumstances. So just to elaborate a bit more on what generating your happiness kind of provides for people, it kind of provides you your own source of energy, because when you're able to create your own energy or happiness, you're less reliant on finding happiness in materialistic objects or having your emotions persuaded by circumstances. So for example, if things in your environment aren't as great as probably they should be, you're still able to tap into your own positive energy and become less reliant on what's happening on the outside, and really divert a lot of energy and care towards yourself. And that's not to say that your environment doesn't play a factor into your mental health. It does. And from your end, you should always try and surround yourself with positive people and things in your life. But sometimes that's not always possible. Sometimes people at school might not be in the happiest mood, or things at home might not always be great, but you should be able to tap into your own positive energy. And this really helps keep your own moods in control, because you're not persuaded by external circumstances, and you're more focused on your own energy. You're also able to live more in the present moment, being mindful of what is happening in front of you. And that is so vital for your mental health, because a lot of times our mind is either thinking about the past or the future, and it's important to just soak in the present. And I will elaborate more on that in the next slide, please. Okay, so some ways to generate your own happiness includes gratitude journaling, and this is something that I myself practice. Gratitude journaling involves writing down every day what you're grateful for. You can tell yourself that maybe if you have limited time, you can just limit it to a certain number, but really concentrating not only on your successes or your achievements, but also focusing on basic things that we can often take for granted. And that might include just basic resources that you have, a family, food, water, shelter, independence, freedom in certain aspects. So really taking all of those things into consideration, and also learning to show that type of gratitude and appreciation to the people that make you grateful for being where you are right now. The other thing includes goal journaling. So really focusing on more than just your academic or your career aspects, but focusing on also your relationships with people, friends, family, and the type of person that you want to become. So your character, your emotional life, your social life, also your academics and career, but also thinking about more aspects of your life, and and really taking those things into consideration, because it's really easy for us to neglect our family or our friends, because we're so being busy with academics or our careers. But it's really important to divert that attention towards other parts of your life. And by writing down your goals, you can really be able to attend to those needs as well. And you can form small habits. So that might even include something as small as, like, if you want to connect more with your family, then like giving them a call while you're going on a walk. So you can pair these small tasks with each other, so that way you can make time for the things that matter in your life. Another thing that's super important that I also do is called reflective journaling. So reflective journaling allows you to really kind of, it's like a word vomit in some ways, because you're just letting out all the events of the day or things that you've been bottling up for a while, and you're expressing them on paper. And when you do that, you're able to also look at what's happened and be able to like look at it from alternative perspectives, and might be from the perspective of another person, or it might just be from a new refreshed perspective, because once you've kind of disassociated yourself from a problem, you're able to look at it from a new pair of eyes and maybe rationalize the situation, understanding the different perspectives as mentioned, but also like understanding maybe is there something that you could work on yourself, because you can't control other people, but you can control the type of person that you want to be, and the type of things you want to contribute to situations in life. So if there's something that you can work on or develop, you can work on that during reflection as well. Another important thing is forgiveness, and honestly, that's something I'm still working on, because I view holding grudges as a way of holding someone accountable for their mistakes. And I've learned over time that that does more harm to the person who is holding the grudge, opposed to the person who the grudge or the resent is directed towards. And I actually read this quote by Nelson Mandela. Holding a grudge or all that contempt is like drinking poison and expecting it to kill someone else, because you're filling yourself with so much negative energy, and you're just bottling up all these emotions, and the other person isn't as affected by it as you. So it's important to forgive them, and also to forgive yourself for whatever part you played in it, and learn from that experience. Another important thing to consider is mindfulness exercises, and this is something you can do in between work, or it's just like a type of mindset that you can develop, is not thinking about the past or the future all the time. It's important to use the past as a learning experience, and also thinking about your future in terms of what kind of goals that you would like to direct yourself towards, but not thinking about things that you cannot control. And I know that is difficult, which is why you can always put it out on paper and try to rationalize through reflective journaling, but really trying to stay in the present moment, because oftentimes if we divert our mind towards the past or the present, we're not going to be able to enjoy what we have in front of us. And also enjoying the things that we have in front of us provides us like that downtime to rejuvenate and get back some positive energy into your life, so that if a problem does occur, then you'll have enough energy to deal with adversities or obstacles. And the most important thing is being authentic to who you are. And you've probably heard this very often, a lot, and I know it might sound cliche, but being yourself is so important, because if you're not able to be yourself around other people, it starts to feel uncomfortable, like you can't express your fullest self to other people. So really being able to tap into that. And also, I know personally from my own experience, it's difficult to look at the successes of other people on social media and feel inadequate at times. I know that I've looked at people receiving awards in, say, debate, and I can't do debate. So when I look at that, I always think I wish I had done debate, because people are finding success in this. And the important thing is to not chase success, but to chase after things that you enjoy. And when you're able to do that, you'll automatically get success in whatever areas you most enjoy, because you're backing that up with passion and drive. So these are just like a few things to keep in mind. I hope you can carry some of them with you. And a lot of these things are actually spoken about. I didn't mention on the slides, but I do talk about these things through my articles, but also through an upcoming mental health app called My Espirit. It's MYESPRIT. So please do check it out. It will be published soon and incorporate some of these tools to bettering your mental health and generating your own happiness. Thanks.
So these were the things that were used mainly towards helping us put together the information for the webinar that we were able to show you today. So there's actually a poll in progress right now. So if you would like to, please answer. And yeah, so by then Faith is going to talk a little bit about our organization as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Faith, and I am the founder, or one of the founders of Modern Divergence, and thank you all for being here today. And thank you for answering the poll. So yeah, our organization is called Modern Divergence, and this is actually our very first webinar, and we're super excited to be launching it about minority mental health. So in case you don't know what our organization is, we are international youth-powered, I'm so sorry, I'm sick right now, but we are an international youth-powered, fiscal-sponsored organization that advocates for neurodivergence and combats the impacts of mental and developmental stigma in pediatric healthcare. So we do a lot of projects, and we have a lot of social media. So you can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, sorry. So you can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and our website, which is www.moderndivergence.com. And we also have a podcast that's on every platform.
Thank you so much for that, Faith. So there will probably be one more question on the poll. And while that happens, if you guys have any questions related to the webinar or about us, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we are going to use that as our discussion time and talk about these questions right now. So I'll be going through the chat to see if there's any questions. So Sri, would you like to talk about that since you were doing a lot about the college admissions?
Sure. So, do you think e-school will worsen the mental health situation? Um, I mean, okay, I don't want to be a negative person and say yes, but personally, I do think my mental health will be worsened if I was to answer that. Like being in isolation for already 6 months? I don't know. We started in March. It's already like July. Okay, maybe not 6 months. A lot of time, a lot of months. And being in e-school means, yes, we are going to be in more isolation. And yes, we are only going to talk to people through a screen. And that can be hard for some people. So I do believe that mental health will worsen to some extent. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Kind of going on to that, I read somewhere how hotlines have received even more dials due to COVID-19, and then also there's been an increase in suicides.
Right.
And just because humans are meant to communicate and be in contact with each other, so it definitely is hard, especially if we're going to be doing e-school for who knows how long.
Also, tying that question to minority mental health, I think that's important because a lot of minority neighborhoods might not have access to the same resources. And especially some schools are moving online and some schools aren't, especially private schools are able to kind of be in person. So this might kind of exacerbate the problem that we see with disparities in mental health care because of a lack of resources, even because of COVID.
Hi, I wanted to ask this question more in person. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So, I had a friend who was really suicidal, and it's a hard situation. It's like when you see it on the slide and you're like, well, you call a hotline, right? And you make it sound so easy, right? But incorporating it into the conversation and talking about it on a daily basis, the other person can be very difficult. So do you have any tips on making it easier for both people to converse about suicide, depression more easily?
I'd say a lot of it goes towards understanding the person. And when you think about hotlines, you won't know the person because both ends are anonymous, right? And it can be really difficult sometimes to talk to people on a daily basis. But if there are repetitive calls, like for people who call weekly or daily, the hotlines do pick up for sure. The hotlines pick up and they listen to them, but they can only have one call at a time, each person. So if they get there's only one person on call. So if they get more than one person who calls during a time, they'll tell them at the beginning that, hey, I'm actually not hey, but they'll say that this is a call, that happens weekly. I'm glad to listen to you, but if a more urgent call comes up, I'll have to take that call. So that's what they do. They listen to people's problems. They kind of act as therapists, and they give advice and do the best they can. And a lot of the time, hotlines and therapists, they don't give advice necessarily. They listen, and when people speak their own thoughts, it gives them their own time to reflect and think about their actions, think about their thoughts. And when they put those into words and actually tell someone, it makes more sense in their head. It's different than just thinking about it in their head altogether. And that's what therapists mostly do. They listen to people and they just want their patients or people to just understand what they're going through themselves and organize their thoughts, put it together, and find a solution themselves that will make the most beneficial outcome.
Yeah, that was great. Mostly, I think you kind of misunderstood my question. It was kind of like when you're talking to somebody who you think is depressed, how do you like approach them? Because obviously, as you were all discussing, there's like a very big stigma. Like that same friend, like she goes to therapy and she was like, "Oh, keep it a secret, don't tell anybody," because like society perceives going to therapy as something that's not normal and shouldn't even happen.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry, Faith, you want to answer it?
No, it's okay. I'll go after.
Okay, so going to your point about being an ally for your friend, I think that's really important to realize that, I mean, primarily you want to be there for her, be a shoulder to lean on. So kind of open up the lines of communication so that she's able to discuss with you. I think it's really important to be a listener and not give advice so much because we're teenagers, we're not professionals. And kind of just be there to listen, to kind of absorb those problems, and really to refer her to professional help. I mean, you said she goes to a therapist, but
Yeah, this all kind of happened like 2 years ago. I was just kind of asking like in the future, how do you approach the topic better? Because, you know, like I would want to approach it better in the future.
yeah, so I think just being a listener is great. And another thing is to take care of your own mental health because it can be really difficult to kind of be there for a friend that's really going through that something, and it can take a toll on your own mental health. So I would just be mindful of that and really not guilt yourself into feeling like you have to be there all the time, but rather be a listener and kind of if the problem is escalating, like you're in a hypothetical situation where it's another friend that's feeling that way and confides in you, it's really important to kind of refer her to professional help if she needs it and kind of be there to just be a sounding board and really like not stigmatize the problem that they're facing.
Thanks. Like, have any of you like suspected someone that is suicidal? Like, how did you deal with it?
I can kind of speak on both questions. So for the one about kind of approaching the topic, definitely look at like your background because they have to be able to trust you. So for example, kind of like how we discussed making jokes about depression and stuff like that. If they see that that you've said something like that or like joked about mental illness before, they might not be as willing to talk to you about it. And just like, do you keep secrets? Like, do they trust you not to tell their business to other people? Because I've been in a position where I didn't want to talk to anybody about my mental health, or like I didn't want to tell my boyfriend, I didn't want to tell my friends or anything like that. So definitely just like how do you, even if you don't know that someone has depression or something, how do you kind of show that you're going to be there for them even if they do? And then also just be understanding of their situation, kind of like how your friend had the opportunity to get therapy. Maybe somebody can't get therapy, maybe their parents don't think mental health is an issue, maybe they can't afford therapy or something like that. So just like maybe they don't want professional help. Maybe they don't, because we actually did a poll like a while back in May in Modern Divergence, and we saw that a lot of teenagers actually did not want professional help because they didn't trust their doctors or their therapists to kind of like keep things to themselves and not from their parents who didn't really understand a lot about mental health. And kind of like what they were saying as well, take care of yourself, because I've been in situations where I would have to help friends with their mental health, but that was also harmful for me because it was like every single day we talk about their mental health, and every single day it just, my life was kind of clouded with kind of like what they're going through. So definitely like have that balance. And I'm sorry, I kind of forgot your second question.
It's okay. I kind of forgot too. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of people don't really know what therapy is about after like what that situation I talked about, right? With my friend, my parents also put me in therapy, and I know that's not a situation. That's not a privilege that a lot of people have, and I can say like it was only for like 2 weeks actually, and it was a good experience. People don't really know what therapy is about. They think it's for people who are sick. They don't think that mental health is like something that everybody has to maintain. I don't know if any of you have undergone therapy before, but my old therapist, she like did the same thing that you guys are promoting, right? Do the apps and like talk to friends. I feel like if people experience therapy, even for one day, they would realize that mental health, like the stigma associated with it and the negative stereotype of therapy, like isn't how the media makes it out to be.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Kind of Modern Divergence we did a podcast episode of our art therapy a while ago with United Under Arts, and kind of just talked about all the stigma around art therapy and just therapy in general. And I've never done actual therapy because of my parents, because they don't really think mental health is an actual issue. But I have done peer therapy through just like a lot of websites and apps. And obviously they have their faults, but they were helpful. Like I met this friend and I still talk to her today. It was about like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And we're still friends today who just like talk to each other, help each other out. So yeah, there's different ways to approach therapy, but obviously professional help is the best kind of help there is. And right now, Modern Divergence is working on helping as many teenagers as we can get professional therapy. So yeah.
As someone who has taken like professional therapy before, I do agree. Like I feel like therapy isn't something to only be resorted to when in crisis or when you have a diagnosed mental health illness. It is something that you should actually be taking care of like when signs start to show, or when you start to feel anxious, or if you have problems with your family or your friends. Those are times when you should reach out, because otherwise those problems begin to fester and then manifest into mental health issues. Of course, it is important that people still resort to therapy when they do have mental health issues, but also taking a step back and doing it even before things start to grow.
Cool. So like, how's everybody doing today, I guess?
I think we had some more questions in the chat.
Oh, there was one about study stress. Was that answered already?
No.
No, that was put in after we started talking.
Oh, Aishwarya, I think we know a bit about study stress at our school.
For sure.
Yeah.
So a lot of things is, especially where in Plano, I know, or I mean, I don't know about other schools, but the schools that I've attended have been very competitive. Everyone's always just rushing to get the best grades, to get the best experience, to build the best resume, and to make everything work. And the biggest mistake that we all make is not taking breaks. And I'm a victim of it. I sometimes just go on and I forget to take breaks. I forget to relax. I forget to have something to myself that is not just something, that I enjoy doing. And that's one of the main reasons I think I joined Modern Divergence. It's an amazing organization, and we do things that really help people, which is why now I try to do a lot of volunteering, and I don't do it for the volunteer hours or anything. I do it because I think that I'm helping someone. It makes me feel good. And I think satisfaction is a very big factor. And if you're never satisfied, you're never going to have an improved mental health. You have to be doing things you enjoy and being satisfied with what you like. And sorry, I just want to make sure I answer the question properly. Yeah, and about the future, there's always going to be a future. Sometimes you don't know how your future is going to turn out. You try your best, you do the things that you think will make your future the most successful, but think about the present. Think about what you can do now that's going to make a difference. And long-term goals are very important, but you want to have those little achievements and small goals that you still can reach within a short period of time. So I think that's very important to set not just long-term goals about the future and what you want to be when you grow up and what you want to major in, what college you want to go to. Think about short-term goals and things you can do to be grateful for today, to be grateful for your family, to be grateful for your friends. So yeah, just take time out of your day to make sure you think about those things.
Yeah, I also have something to say about study stress. I think it's true. We're all a victim of that. Like, I know when I get a grade that I know my parents wouldn't be happy with, and I'm like, oh my God, my life is over. And then my friend's like, what'd you get? And I'm like, oh, yeah. So I think it's true. Like, as teenagers, like something bad happens and we're like, our whole world is burning now. And like, we can't see past the next day sometimes. So I think that what Aishwarya said is really helpful. You need to look towards your future, not just today.
I definitely agree. The first time that I was kind of like, okay, I need to chill is when it was like, I think it was like really late at night. I was finishing my 8-push homework and I was like crying, having a mental breakdown. I was like, I have to finish these 8-push notes or else I'm gonna fail. And I was like, and then somebody was like, be quiet and just go to sleep. And I was like, okay, why did I just do that in the first place? Like, I was just like so focused on finishing that homework. I didn't care that I was like made a mental breakdown or anything. Then like somebody just texted me like, just stop and just go to sleep. Like, who cares? It's just like it's just notes or stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that was so simple, but I just couldn't think about it for some reason. So yeah, that was like when I was like, okay, maybe we need to like chill with all of this studying and like the stress and all of that. So definitely there is stress, like not just with me and especially with minority parents because they have such high expectations and they want all A's and all of that. But yeah, it's really important to put yourself first as soon as you can and as many times as possible. But yeah.
Yeah, so if there's any other questions, we'll be happy to answer. Yeah, this Q&A has been going for actually longer than we expected, so that's great. And yeah, it actually doesn't look like there's any questions on the chat as of now. But if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we should be able to answer them and get a response as soon as we can. So yeah.
Look at the questions from Instagram.
No, I haven't. Can you ask a question?
Yeah. So the first one is, how does your individual organizations help minorities with mental health?
Oh, okay. I think this is like towards each panelist. Actually, each panelist can answer this question. So whoever would like to start can start.
I discussed this a lot already, but I'll just say that, I mean, kind of the 3 pillars that we focus on is expression of minority and examining the societal barriers through the media that we produce, and then also advocacy, and then also fundraising for low-fee clinics.
I can go next. So like I said before, I also talked about my org a little bit, but how we specifically, help minorities is through our consultations, right? So even though they are open to everyone, we of course use our Instagram and our media handles to specifically reach those POC, right? Because those communities are often more stigmatized. So using the social media awareness, we try to get more POC involved in our organization, more of them to consult with us, and yeah.
I don't know if you want me to speak for monodivergence or if you want to.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You can.
Yeah, okay. So obviously, I'm sure a lot of our individual organizations are mainly full of minorities in the first place. So I love that. It's really good to have diversity in your organizations. Modern Divergence specifically, a lot of our projects target minorities. For example, our environmental racism campaign that we're working on right now is really meant to just raise awareness for how minority communities are handling COVID-19 and mental health at this moment. Also, like I mentioned a while ago, we're also working on our youth therapy fund. and we're selling stickers, stress balls, and all of that to raise money to pay for teens therapy. And yeah, overall, we're just a really diverse organization, and we just love helping minorities in general because it's something that we're all pretty passionate about.
Oh, for me, my organization is my Espirit, which is an upcoming mental health app. I wouldn't say right now, like we're targeting teenagers and elementary school students, and definitely like reaching out to minority groups as well, just so that we can give them like the tools they need through difficult situations, or even just life in general, and going throughout their day with a positive feeling. So really giving them access, sorry about that, that's my phone, but really giving them like access to tools to write down what you're grateful for, write down your goals, reflection, mindfulness, and receiving external support. I'm so sorry, guys. But yeah, that's how we try to reach out to people. I'll just mute myself now.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Faith, were you going to say something?
Yeah, we have one last question, which is how do you discuss mental health with strict minority parents?
Would anyone like to take up this question? I feel like I've been talking a lot, so.
I can. So I don't have very strict parents. I'd say we're kind of like medium strict. They don't really believe in mental health very much. So, but for me, I've always found myself just kind of ignoring it. And now recently I've been trying to kind of speak up about it. I'd say there's no like one effective method that's going to work, right? Because every family is different. Every parent has a different view on mental health, whether it be just flat out ignoring it or like actually accepting it. So one person I actually interviewed a while ago, his name is Asim Tavari, and he said that the way that he talked to his parents about it, his mom about it, was he made jokes about it. And of course, not like self-deprecating jokes, more like joking in a way that helped them understand what mental health was and how he was feeling. And it was really a unique way, honestly, because, you have to form those jokes in a way that's not making fun of yourself for that issue, but more so to inform them in a lighthearted manner. So the way he did that was he talked about it a lot around his parents for about a year, and then finally, actually had a discussion. So, finding the best way that works for you is really important. For him, humor worked, but for some other families, it might not. For yourself, it might not. So I would say focus in on yourself and your parents and talk about it with them. Sit down, have that conversation. If they're still not accepting, then, it's really up to you where you take this. But when they're strict, I know it can be hard. It can be hard for them to accept, even for you to accept sometimes. So it's really taking that step out of your comfort zone and, trying to just have that discussion because it is needed.
And to add on, I feel like you can also like show like, I guess like research or statistics, or even information on symptoms about mental health issues, and kind of depicting that like mental health issues doesn't exclude anyone, and really just regardless of what your parents would think. Sorry, that sounds so rebellious, but you still need to like put yourself first and really get the support you need. And I know that when I had like my own set of issues that I was working with in therapy, I know that at times like my therapist would also converse with my parents just to make sure that we're all on the same boat. So really getting the support you need, and then your therapist can also help translate that to your parents as well, so that they can support you throughout your journey.
Hi, sorry, I'm back. So I had kind of something to say. Not only talk to your parents, talk to other people who are going through the same thing. Like, I'm lucky enough to live around a lot of people who are going through the same thing I am. Like, we all have strict parents. We all worry about grades. So it's good to talk to somebody who relates to you. And sometimes you don't even need to talk to your parents. Sometimes you just need to relax with friends and then you know, your parents, they may be really strict, but they really do want what's best for you. They want you to have a good future. So yeah, just talk to your friends.
Those are the questions I have.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was great. All those questions were amazing. Thank you so much to all of the people who asked questions. And yeah, so that looks like it's the end of the Q&A. But please reach out to us. We had our contact information, and we will share the slides and recorded version to everyone's email once it's over very soon. And yeah, okay. So I just wanted to say thank you to all our partners, panelists, and attendees. It was amazing having you guys here talk to us and talk to the other attendees about, mainly to our partners. Thank you so much for talking and taking out time out of your day to talk to us about it. It was really inspirational. And thank you as well to our attendees who attended and listened to our different aspects of minorities and mental health. We really appreciate it. So that's it for the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's going to be a recording of this on YouTube and also